Hey New Tech, how are you doing? Here's our fifth video on the music app, learning to use Unity. So I've just been fiddling around trying some different layouts for this app, and I've got in the graphics folder here an image that I can maybe place in a minute. But first things, I want to create a toggle interaction first. So I like these buttons that I've got here. But at the moment, the button functionality, it requires me to place my finger on the touch screen and hold it down, which Unity calls a pointer down interaction. I can simulate that with my mouse on my computer screen here by clicking on it with holding my mouse button down. You can see here that the button does some shading. I've got another one set up there, but there's no audio connected to it yet. So what I want to do is maybe change the functionality of this, and it's a kind of a complicated thing to do because it's not inside the Unity functionality. So what I want to do is add another add a different script here. So I'm going to keep this button, and I'm going to duplicate that in my main panel and move this off. And I might just put it down here for now. And what I'm going to do is modify this button, and I'm going to call it Koto Loop and change that to toggle. And I'm copying that user interface thing, the button, to keep the size, to keep the sprite, and all of those things. But what I want to do now is delete this script. So I'm going to remove that component script. And I'm going to go to my script folder here. And I've created another C# script. If you double click on that, you'll open it up. And you can see what it's about. So this is where it gets really complicated. If you've never done any kind of computer code before or HTML stuff, just let me take you through it. So Unity supports scripting in this language called C#. And C# is really, it's kind of a careful computer language. It's always asking you to declare variables in a very precise way so that you don't repeat names or you don't get a variable type confused or whatever. It can send your Unity project into a bit of a spin if you have those things mixed up and confused. So the architecture of the script is normally, you have some declarations at the top of the script to tell Unity whether it's going to connect to basic things in the programming environment, like, for example, the inspector, which we've already seen in the last time we did a script. And then you normally have a name for the script, and its script's name is important in C#. Some other computer languages are not so fussy about that, but C# definitely is. And what we're doing here is we're creating a name for this extra bit of functionality. so we can use it. And it makes it modular, and I can transfer this between projects. So it's kind of handy. But this word public gets used a lot, and class. These are things that are kind of a little bit confusing at first in C#. But we can create containers for data, which are called variables. We can create scripts themselves, which have variables in them and do things to those variables. We can create scripts that are seen right across the programming in Unity and are available and to use, and can be communicated to by other scripts. And to make those things visible across the computing space or domain, programming domain, we give this script itself, this extra bit of functionality, a classification of public. And then the name itself is considered a class. And it's like mono behavior is basically C# jargon that means that this is like a script that's part of Unity. So this is the name of the script. The next part of our script here is what I call the declaration of variable stage. So what I want to do here is I want this script to join onto a game object's train of components. I want it to appear down the bottom. And I want to create a little window in there that will allow me to tie the function of this script to another game object. In this case, to an audio source. And the best way to do that in Unity is to have, and you can see here, if I look at these buttons that we created with the other script, we created a variable that was called my audio source, and it appears there with the name my audio source. And then it creates this little window that we could drag our audio source game object into, essentially tying the button onto the audio source object. You can see in these other buttons that we did for the big taiko drum sounds, they have this functionality built in to the button object that comes with Unity, the one that you will find up here in the user interface list. But what we've got to do here is something outside of that, because Unity doesn't give us an option to control the volume of an audio source. So it seems a little bit complicated here, but if you can follow from the other tutorial, we created a button to turn the volume on and off so that when the app starts, the music track is playing, it's looping. We can have numerous tracks all at the same tempo and they stay synchronized. So what we're doing now here with the scripting stage is that I want to allow this button to be touched once, and I want it to stay on. In other words, to be a toggle. So the procedure for that is grab your user interface button and drag this toggle, go to your script folder, drag this toggle object onto the button. And then we'll see down here that there's a toggle script that's been attached. And it might make sense to actually move this up here above this event trigger object. So I'm going to move it up one. And what this event trigger is going to do is once we get this all connected up, it's going to search through here and find the functionality in this script. But first of all, here's our window for our audio source. So I'm going to have to create another audio source. And I think I'm going to create, in this case, I'll grab one of these. These ones are all set up to loop, so they should have volume of 0. They should have play on awake and loop. So just check that and then right click, duplicate. And I might change its name. And then importantly, I've got to go back to my toggle button now and drag this audio source in to this script here. So there's the audio source. While that's selected, click and drag. And now we've tied it to that audio source. The other thing is this script that I've created has a couple of functions in it, and what I've got to do is also tie that script to a user interface button that is actually in this object here. In this game object, we have a button component here. So I actually have to click the game object kind of and drag it onto itself. And that is kind of a weird thing to do. You might think, well, you know, hang on, why do I have to do that? In that moment that I drag that game object onto itself here, Unity searches through and updates all of the functions and everything that are now available in this current train of game objects. And now we can go to our event trigger and do the same thing. This event trigger thing saying, you know, what do you want me to do? You know, I'm tied to this physical button here, but I can actually interact with anything you want. Can interact with a completely different audio source if you want. So what I've got to do here is drag the button onto itself. And what I'm doing now is saying, okay, event trigger, look through your all of your train of game object components here and learn what's in this new toggle looper script. Okay, so I'm not putting audio sources in there, I'm putting the button in there to teach it this new functionality. And then when I click here, you can see that there's the name of my script is there. And in the name of the script, my function appears, which is a do trigger function, which I'm going to talk about in a second. And it's the same for both, because it's a toggle, it's actually the same function each time. So what does this all mean? Well, let's have a look at it. If I press play now, okay, now what have I done wrong? I've done something wrong. I think this is on pointer up. I think I just need one of these. I've got some other ones there. Pointer up. Let's just get rid of these. So I should only have one event trigger here. So I've only clicked on this once, and the first thing that's happened that's different is the button's gone green, and it's stayed green. And you can hear that the audio is on. And it's in sync. And I've got the same sample over here. So I know it's perfectly in sync, which is great. If I touch it again, it's off. But unlike the one-shot drums down here that will play through the entire sample, this just will cut in at any time you hit it and put the volume to 1. Which is also unlike these other volume controlling sample pads, which you have to hold your finger down on to play. And the important thing with all of these is that they are synchronized. They don't lose any time, they stay perfectly in sync for the rest of the day. So let's have a look at this mysterious toggle looper script and see how it works. To create, and if I can do this like this, we go to the toggle looper game object. And we go to our script now. So when I write public class toggle looper mono behavior, that creates the script. And I press save and I put it in my scripting folder, then that will appear in there with that name. And it will, Unity will do all of that for me automatically when I do the function of, when I go in here and say create a new script. It'll create it in there and it will ask me what the name is. And when I create that name, all of these things will appear like that. The next thing I want to do is create a container in the script so that I can tie an audio source to it. The audio source that holds the sample that I want played by it. So I write public and I declare the type of variable. In this case, it's a game object called audio source. And then after that, I have to give it a name. And Unity has this weird, very, very old codey naming convention whereby you use a small letter to start the name. And then if you use capitals in there, Unity will create separate words, my audio source, in its inspector. And it's a weird thing. It's not universal to computer programming. It's common. But it is something that comes up in Unity a lot that can be really confusing. So this name here is not spelt like that. But if we put separate words into a script, then the computer in its kind of dumbness will try and interpret those separate words as scripting commands. So a variable can be used to create a line in your game object interface inside your inspector, and then you can drag another game object to tie functionality to that. That's a really common thing in Unity programming. Next, there's another public variable declared. This one is a bool, which is short for Boolean. Boolean meaning Boolean logic, which is kind of yes and no, true, false, 1 or 0 kind of things. And in Unity, they use the words in C#, they use the words true and false. So I have to, what I want to do is create a little checkbox in my inspector that will be ticked when I play and unticked when I hit it again to show that the states. So by creating this and making it a public variable, this is triggered box appears here in the inspector. And you can see when I play, actually I might have to do it like this. Take the maximize on play off, and I will have to also, yeah. So you can see now over here, if I scroll down and watch this little box when I press play here, you'll see that little tick appearing in it. So that's what that variable is for. And then the last variable here is creating a variable for me to connect a button to. I'm not sure why that's. Just give that a quit. So that creates this variable called myButton, which allows me to drag the game object into, so that the game object can search through and find the new functions that are available. Now below I have a function, and it's complicated to teach you this kind of scripting. So I've done this one for you. It's a public script. I want it to be seen right across Unity. It doesn't have any special kind of condition to it or case, so I've put the word void in there, and then I've given it a name. Now C# calls this a method, but classical computer programming would call this a function. And in Unity, you can see that it's looking for functions in here. But there is kind of jargon points of difference between C# and Unity script, the original type of computer language, JavaScript that Unity was built on. And there's still some throwbacks to that. So if you're wondering, you know, why are we using function? Because I've learnt C# before, and I've learnt the word method. So it is confusing, I know. But whatever it is, it's going to do something with the variables. And the variable here is do trigger. So when the trigger is not triggered, which is what this statement means, and the exclamation mark is computer jargon for the word not. Let's see if you can follow this logic, right? I defy any of you to actually follow it the first time, but if the button is not triggered and then the variable is activated and returns the value of true, i.e. when we put our finger on the button and this little box is ticked. Okay, so if it's off and then it is activated, set my audio source volume to 0.8. And then the second thing that I've asked it to do is go to the button that we've put into my button and find its parameter for the user interface object and any image file that's in there. So what it will do here is it will find the source image here and it will change its color to green. And hopefully we should see this box in here turn green. And you can see how that box is actually being shaded. So this is a nice feature in Unity that when we're actually putting these scripts together to control parameters in the inspector, the inspector gives you feedback straight away as to what's happening. Now this could be a function just in itself, and I could get rid of the rest of this, in which case I would open the app, and if I touch the button it would go on and it would just stay on forever and it would be green and the music would be playing. So what I want is another touch to do something. So another condition that I have to test for in this function is the condition that the button is actually on and triggered. Okay. So if the do trigger is activated and it is triggered, and then we hit it again and we report a negative on the little Boolean tick box here, then this function will happen and it will turn the audio source volume back to 0 and it will turn the color back to white. Now, to make sure I have the syntax correct, I need to use these curly braces. And this type of function in computing is called an if then else statement. And it's also called a conditional statement, whereby we set up specific conditions to test something through the code. This is a tricky little bit of code to understand, but it is what we call an argument, and it has round brackets, and you can see that there are arguments that are attached here by putting these round brackets in, and it gives us a little bit of extra functionality in the script. Okay, and that's it for Unity tutorial number 5. Thank you.